a lot of what I do, to be honest, is building the project plans and frameworks for my company, because many times we would have never done this project before. So it takes a lot of creativity. And I draw on, people like Rajesh and Murli and the other brilliant people that I've had in my life as inspiration for these project plans and frameworks. Rajesh came to UBC in Vancouver, like you said, for 2 days, came and spoke for an hour or two and talked a little bit about some of the projects. I remember Asia Paints telling these stories, I wouldn't say telling, weaving these stories like tapestries of human experience around framing the problem. That was my first experience with center of gravity and with human-centric consulting. And I remember being very surprised that there was room for that in the business world, because as you go into an MBA, you're naive and you think business is this, big monolithic machine. And it was really refreshing to see, not just to hear the stories, and that, the consultants and this human-centric consulting had a role in that relationship, but also that the outcomes drove value and not just profit, which I kept with me. So in my world, a lot of the management consultants I deal with are very institutional. They do a lot of work for government. They do a lot of work that's sort of transactional. Take the framework that you did last year, go interview some new people, update the framework and submit it. And those kinds of projects are very transactional. And I would say that center of gravity is, let's say, the opposite of transactional consulting. And it's really, it's the same thing that gets me excited about consulting. Building new frameworks or building new ideas or thinking of things in new ways, I think is the most exciting part for me, and probably the part that drives the most value. Because in medicine, you have a foot specialist and a throat specialist and a skin specialist, and nobody now has this holistic sense of how things function together. So it's very difficult for any one of them to solve problems. And I see that same issue replicating itself over and over and over again in different paradigms in society, right? In government, you have a specialist in the budget, you have a specialist in the environment, you have a specialist in the commerce, but there's no generalist with this holistic perspective of how to fix the whole thing. So you have everybody just pushing the only lever that they have. And I think in consulting, or in business rather, not just consulting, in business, it's the same thing. You have your specialist in finance, and your specialist in logistics, and your specialist in brand or consumer behavior. And I think that if you start to think of a business as a cohesive body, as a person, and understand it as a system with, human elements, then I think you could solve a lot of these problems that are plaguing business and getting at, because these holistic movements are becoming very, very trendy. Besides the fact that they're helpful and that they're really valuable, people are starting to register that you can't learn everything about a system by becoming a specialist in one aspect of it. And I think that right now is a brilliant time to launch something like what you're talking about, like that, so that people resonate with that. Oh, this is the holistic medicine of business. Because the first thing I thought of was somebody like sitting beside some water, like a creek or a stream, maybe with some little waterfall or something. There's a place that I go to in Central America that's quite lush and green, and a lot of beautiful freshwater creeks. And I picture this person, this center of gravity person, sitting there almost like a yogi, like sitting cross-legged. I picture a female, maybe early 30s, mid 30s, just very natural, like not synthetic clothing, like natural clothing, like cottons and things like this, and just very happy and inviting and sort of generous. I don't want to gender stereotype, but like maternal, like sort of female energy, it just feels really peaceful. Like it's almost like, I think I almost associate it with like meditation. It's almost like a spiritual setting. When I picture somebody in nature wearing non-synthetic clothing that would be woven sort of natural in a natural setting, I'm tempted to say that that's the past, but that's only because, maybe we're trending away from that. But I think it's also the future. So that very natural state, being in harmony with your environment, I think is an element of the past and an element of the future, just not an element of the present for most of us, unfortunately. I think it represents the lessons of the past that would make for the proper future, to be honest, because it's really all about homeostasis and balance. Um, as a teacher, I mean, I struggle myself to be that sanguine and that calm and understanding, and that's something that I respect a lot, especially in light of the dangers in the world. You know, if the world was a very safe place, then everybody could be that welcoming, and I admire that. It's almost like a little bit like martyrdom, you know, being willing to open yourself up to the risks in the world in exchange for being able to share the wisdom of the world is a noble thing to do, and it's vulnerable, and it's scary to me, and if I could learn to do that sort of comfortably. Anyway, but I think of this person, like I said, of being like kind of a spiritual leader, but I do see it kind of as that like yogic